Why go to church? If Christianity is really about a set of beliefs and practices, where does going to church fit in? Why couldn't someone just read their Bible, pray, be a nice person, and be a Christian in good standing? What exactly is the point of going to church? Today, we're going to talk about that. Hey, I'm Bailey.
I'm Michael.
And I'm David.
And welcome back to the Facing the Gates podcast. I hope you guys are ready. Get strapped in, because it's time for a new series. We've done 3, I guess, full ones. We've done a bunch of one-offs, and we've made a rounds. So it is time to address the question, why go to church? What's the deal, man? What's the point? Why would you even go to church?
Who cares, bro?
Yeah, what's the deal? So in this episode, there's 2 questions we're going to discuss. Obviously, one is the one in the title, why go to church? But the other question is probably a more foundational question to ask, and that is one of church ecclesiology, or the question of what is the church? After all, if you're going to church, shouldn't you know what that is? Now, your gut reaction may be, that's not even a question, the church is the building with the cross on it, it's down the road. But what I'm actually speaking of is a matter of debate between many Christians, and depending on what you believe, will likely determine what church you go to. So I'm going to just kind of give an overview of the major views, and then we can discuss and kind of see what you guys think. The more ancient historic response tends to be or sound a little bit more exclusivistic to people today. For example, the Catholic answer is going to be the Catholic Church is the one true church founded by Christ. Therefore, the church, capital C, is synonymous with the Catholic Church. Similarly, the Orthodox answer is also going to be the Orthodox Church is the one true church founded by Christ. Therefore, the church, capital C, church, is synonymous with the Orthodox Church. Now, generally speaking, the Protestant answer is going to be that the church is invisible because the church isn't a physical place, but the people inside the church, and believers aren't all in the same physical place. Some believe the question of ecclesiology is dead because they believe that all churches have fallen away. And there are, of course, reasons why people take this or that view on ecclesiology, but I don't want to speak for other people here. So for the purposes of this episode, as well as some of the upcoming ones, I personally am going to refrain from giving my specific thoughts on these views for now. I just want you to know what they are going forward for when we are doing some of the episodes that we're going to be doing in the future. But yeah, these are the different views that are out there. And what are your thoughts on those views before we get too deep into it?
I kind of it's weird because from my perspective, both seem reasonable because, what is a church without the people in the church, as in the Protestant viewpoint, but also in, say, more Orthodox beliefs, the church is not just the symbolism, it is the place where the rituals and where you go. It is the foundation where, and more Protestantism, they feel the people are that foundation. Though, even Orthodox, I bet all of them would agree, a church is not a church without the people.
Right.
But there's a time and place to do certain things, and that would be at church. So it's kind of like, I see where both places are going, and both have decent reasoning.
And if I can try my best to advocate for any of these positions, if you have questions like why would you believe the Catholic Church is the true church, I can probably give you a reason why they think that. That's I'm trying to just give you the information. I'm not going to think for you. I'm just trying to let you know what these views are so we can discuss them and kind of dissect them and figure that all out.
Yeah, because I mean, Orthodox, since as we've spoken about before, Orthodox is very much based in not just the beliefs, but the rituals, the meaning behind everything. And so that's kind of, as I view where that comes from, where Protestantism is just a big revolt against the foundation of having to have something, the rituals and whatnot, stay the same.
Yeah, the Protestant Reformation, there's a lot you could get into, but it's important to, anytime you try and discuss like differences between churches, I think it's very important to know the history, which we don't have time to get into in this episode. But, you know, the Protestant Reformation, if you want to talk about any of the unique things about Protestantism, you have to understand the historical context in which it happened. It happened within the Roman Catholic Church because of certain teachings that certain people disagreed with. And then you have the people that revolted against the church. And then you have the people that revolted against the people who revolted against the church.
And like where we get like I think Baptists and a few others, the more kind of emotional, as I would say, version of Protestantism really in the U.S. came kind of after the scientific revolution. There was kind of that spiritual, emotional revolution, as I like to say. At least that's what I remember from history class. Because they were doing, that's where like the tent revivals and everything started.
Yeah, that's where your Baptists and Methodists come from. A lot of the time is kind of a revivalist culture in the 1700s and early America, Puritans and stuff like that. Michael's been quiet. What do you think?
Well, me personally, I've always believed the body is your biggest temple. Body is your biggest place of worship. Because without the spiritual side, there is no point in a church. And so I look at a church as just a place of meeting and a place of worship, not necessarily a certain place.
Right.
You could turn anything to a church. But again, as they were saying, without people there, what weight does it hold? And I see the place for the traditions and everything and why they want them to be in a sanctioned place, but that just doesn't align with my beliefs.
So you lean more Protestant.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing is, as I've been getting more into certain, I guess, kind of understanding the nuances in the theology between different church groups, there's some things I lean Protestant on, there's some things I lean Orthodox on, and it's like there's some things I might lean Catholic on. It's kind of, it's a bad comparison to compare these two, but it's kind of like politics. Like you'll say like I agree with this, but I'll agree on this side, but I'll agree with that on that side.
Like they all have good points.
I can understand why certain people believe what they believe. Now, what I don't like is when people of any group really, but it does happen a lot of times with Christians, where they say like, oh, that dirty Christian group over there, like Protestants and Catholics a lot of times.
Ew, Catholic.
Those dirty Catholics praying to Mary and praying the rosary and all this, it's, to me, it's unappealing to be dismissive of why someone believes something. At least hear them out on why they believe it and why they practice the way that they do, because it may very well be that you guys, there's not really a problem, that you're just talking past each other because you're making assumptions about someone.
Yeah. And something that we've learned, especially on this podcast, is we can differ, but we can still fucking respect each other.
Right.
And we can the heart of an issue we usually all fall together with. It's just the external factors we might disagree on.
I mean,
It's like at the end of the day, all Christians believe in God, Jesus, the Bible. I don't know a Christian that has managed to be a Christian and not believe in those three things.
Right. There are certain fundamentals that are common to every group.
Yeah, and so instead of fighting and all the infighting that goes on, even Baptist to Baptist, Methodist to Methodist, Catholic to Catholic, celebrate the similarities and appreciate them and understand where the other side's coming from.
And that's
you might
not to
learn
say that
something.
the differences aren't important, because they are, and they should be discussed and they should be debated,
Yeah.
but there's an appropriate
way.
to do it and an appropriate time to do it. And I don't know, I just see some, and maybe this is because I'm on the inside and I'm looking at all of this stuff. I think there's a lot of pointless debates and a lot of arguing on things that don't really matter. I'm not saying that, for example, ecclesiology doesn't matter. I mean, obviously that matters, you know. But I mean, that gets into a much, we're kind of dabbling in much bigger rabbit holes of conversations of why people believe certain things.
Yeah.
Which we're going to be exploring in future episodes, actually quite soon.
And I think a lot of it is we are pack animals. And if whether or not we are wholeheartedly behind something, even if we don't 100% believe it, we'll follow the pack and persecute those who think differently, which seems a lot of the infighting in Christianity is pack based. And instead of arguing until you're blue in the face, you could literally have a 5-minute conversation and figure more shit out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like as you were talking with
I recommend groups.
diving into the bigger
Go ahead.
issues, it's something like, heck, even in our society, people will pick like the smallest like issues for politics and be like, yeah, man, it's like there's a bigger issue in front of that tiny issue. Why don't we try to figure that one out first?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to, in dismissing the overarching issue just makes it more prominent. Where it's like putting a band-aid on a small cut when you have an internal bleeding. It ain't gonna help.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'm going to say on this is if you're going to comment on something you believe is canonically wrong, or this tradition's wrong, don't just say it, be willing to have a conversation, because that's a lot of what's missing is there
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, don't straw man other people because don't listen to what your group said about the other group. Actually go talk to that group and understand what they believe and why, and then respond to them charitably. And I guarantee you it will go a lot better.
Yeah,
Because if you're just spreading misinformation because you misunderstood something that someone else misunderstood, that's part of kind of the problem.
And
yeah. And if you're not willing to learn and to grow from these conversations, then don't have them. Because that'd be like me coming up here and not be willing to hear Bailey out on his side, David out on his side, but me just to poke fun at them because David's an atheist, Bailey's a Christian, so therefore I got to make fun of both of them.
We're trying to give him reasons. He's like, no, I don't know. No. My ears are closed. No.
Yeah.
So,
So if
or
you're-
me being like, Bailey, God's dead. He doesn't exist. Into the void we go for every reasoning behind.
because that would create nothing and we'd have like one episode.
Yeah. And we'd also
not
hate
good-
each other by the end.
It's not good content.
Yeah. So guys, create good content.
Yeah, that's the moral of the story. But as someone who has kind of who has been looking into the different theological views of different traditions, and it is a massive can of worms, and I don't recommend it unless you're serious about it, because it gets really confusing really quickly, and it can be tempting to just say, I don't really care about any of this. I'm just going to do my thing and then throw all the questions in the trash. But the questions are important. Coming to a conclusion about who is right or who is the most right, as I like to look at it, who is the least wrong, they're important to kind of come to conclusions too, and to be honest with yourself about these issues and not necessarily just go to the church that's down the road because it's there. And I think if you're serious about it, you need to be an advocate for where in Christianity you are. And this is one of the ecclesiology is one of the issues why there are so many different church groups, different types of Christian, different denominations, because this is one of those many things that different people disagree on and have different views on. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that. If you have anything else, we can wrap this part up.
Think for yourself, and if you are looking towards, say, Christianity, and you think this is what you've been looking for or whatever, this is what you truly believe, it's okay not to know some of these answers. Because the process is none of us are perfect. And you're not going to have all the answers. But it's your job to ask these questions and to be seeking instead of... And it's not something to get hung up to start with. Because at the end of the day, Christianity's core tenets are God, Jesus, salvation, the Bible. Are some of the... And that's just the most basic, child down... You can explain that to a 4-year-old and they'll get it.
Right.
Once you believe in all that, that's when
you've graduated from the basics.
Yeah. So, and you don't have to jump right off the...
Don't go off the deep end.
Yeah. Don't jump in the deep end and be like, I'm a hardcore Baptist, even though a week ago I was an atheist trying to figure my way out in this world.
Yeah, and I to that point, I do empathize for people because it's very confusing nowadays because there's so many different groups and it's so many different nuances of beliefs within one Christian religion. So, I mean, like, for you, I feel kind of bad because there's, like, all this stuff and you don't know who to listen to and why.
Especially,
and it is confusing.
Especially in the age of technology and information we're
There's
in.
so much information, you don't know what information to listen to.
It used to be you go to the church that's near you.
Yeah.
It used to be you eat what you were fed.
Yeah.
Now we have options.
Or if there wasn't a church, there was someone doing something semblance of a church. That's kind of, especially in the South, the Protestant idea is really ingrained. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, heck, I see it on Facebook all the time about back in the day, there was no church. It was just a little shack we went. And stuff like that. Design, no matter what, if people want to congregate and have that discussion, have someone lead the discussion, it's going to happen. I mean, that's kind of how America was made.
Yeah.
Like, a bunch of people were fed up and they're like, let's meet. And they did.
Yeah. And then I've been to, back in the day, I remember going to, I want to say they were both Southern Baptist Church. And even with them being both the same denomination church in the same area, in the same city, had two different ideas on things. And so, especially in the modern age, it's so muddied and diluted since there's not really a governing body like, no, that's not right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, I think this may be unsatisfying for people at home. We're not going to give you an answer to the ecclesiology question. Again, the idea is just to kind of give you an overview of what these views are, and we'll probably get more into why these different groups believe what they do and in future episodes.
Because we want you to make that decision.
We want you to think and reason your way through it, and I'm not going to tell you how to do that. So
And I mean, though, if you've listened to all the episodes, you can probably figure out where, say, like Bailey would stand. And I mean, I pretty much told you, it's like, I don't know, both have good sides.
yeah,
And
I
Michael leans
understand.
more Protestant,
yeah, I understand different perspectives.
but but with it being one of the core kind of
And another thing about this is I don't want to, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I don't want to draw lines and divide Christians even further. I don't want to say, this is what I believe and I believe those are wrong. Even though I think there is a time and place for that. Ultimately, right here, right now, we are trying to explore what there is and why people believe it. And
we're advocating for trying to
I don't want to
figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to come swinging a sword in at certain people before I even understand what different people believe. So that's kind of the premise of this, is we're trying to understand the basics. Is basically what I'm getting at. So, all right. Now that we've covered our bases on church ecclesiology, it is time to answer the question that is the name of the episode. What do you believe the purpose of going to church is? Now, there's lots of things we could come up with, but shall we say brainstorm? Why? We'll start with Michael. Why would you go to church? What's the point of going to church to you?
For a community of similarly minded people to come together and learn more spiritually and be able to ask these questions to a person who may have more knowledge or may have a closer relationship with God. Or let's say you have a question that's making you question your faith. You're able to go use your free will and ask and learn. And I look at a church as a community helping to guide versus the foundation, because I look at foundation as in the inner self, and then the community outside is the church, or what we would consider a church. Mm-hmm. And so I mainly see it as we're pack animals. We want a community, and sometimes you have questions you can't answer, and maybe someone at the church, whether it's preacher, one of the members, one of the singers or whatever, might have your answer, might have been where you're at and able to help guide you. Mm-hmm. And so that's my little brainstorm on why.
What about you, David? Why would a filthy atheist ever step foot in church? Well, not you specifically, but like hypothetically, if someone were to go to church, what do you think the point of them going to church would be?
Well, I mean, Michael really hit the nail, at least for most people. And because I swear we've had a conversation about kind of on your path of sanctity, or like, say, for example, if you're reading the Bible, you don't know about this, you're probably going to want to ask the pastor, someone who is more
well-versed.
Yeah. Well, possibly hopefully more well-versed. And if not, maybe y'all can learn something new together.
Yeah.
Between that and with us being social.
Yeah, I want to learn about the Nephilim.
Yeah. With us being more cultural, well, as a culture, as humankind, in reality, we're very social. Mm-hmm. Church is a fantastic outlet for social outings, and between that and the possible positive works that can come from that, as getting in a social group and doing stuff, it's, especially in the South, it's very much a big reason people go to church. And then some people love for say more orthodox, love the certain things that they might do during certain times, the certain ceremonies and whatnot,
certain feast days and stuff like that. Yeah.
And some people might just like listening to the organ.
Yeah. Some people might just like the food.
Yeah. I mean, we've known people like with the youth group just
came for the food.
Yeah.
Just I want your snacks and video games.
And to hang out with the homies.
So
hang out with the homies.
Except for the one kid who wasn't friends with anybody, who just showed up.
Yeah. because I mean, I do know some atheists that happen to go to church for social and cultural reasons, but still don't believe. But it's especially in certain cultures, especially like say Hispanic culture, that's very religious. Or I mean, other religions too, they do it for the cultural and social reasons because it's expected of them, and they still want that personal connection with a group of people, and they're usually more like-minded than people like to think. So between that and then the religious reasons, and also it could be a good kind of way to have like a little checkpoint throughout your week of, okay, here's what I've been working on. Maybe let's see if, say, this sermon has anything talking about that, or if I kind of have a revelation, and then, okay, let's move on. Let's see how this week goes. How much do I improve? Do I fall back? Do I need help? Is there something I don't know? It kind of gives that footing.
Yeah. A lot of the things I have on here is kind of, I mean, there's separate points, but you guys have hit on them basically. Yeah, obviously there's to be with a community of people who are on the same journey as you, to learn from one another, to build faith by others' experiences, to know you're not alone in your struggles or doubts. There's also the mission purpose of to connect and serve a greater purpose in your community. Different church groups kind of, reach out in their community and help, whether that's community service or financial needs or raising, donations for like, I don't know, shoes or something, whatever.
I mean, there's a charity around here that I think, if I remember, it's a Christian-based charity, but they make sure kids have beds and get them like stuffed animals and blankets, or I mean, there's our ones that run soup kitchens and stuff on the regular.
Or the little donation boxes near where we live, where you drive by and people will just drop food off and pick them up. Those are ran by churches.
Yeah.
Or the ones for books.
Yeah. Probably the good Christian boy answer, though, that I haven't given yet is obviously to give back what you can and to worship God. Because, ultimately, we've given a lot of extrinsic kind of selfish, individualistic reasons why you would go to church, which is not bad, because some of them, obviously you do have spiritual needs that need to be met to some degree. But also, if you are a Christian and you want to, give back to God in a way that you want to kind of exercise your faith in a way, that's kind of part of the point of going to church.
Yeah, it gives you a better advantage of being able to work with other people and make bigger impacts.
Right, and then we can point to the more extrinsic reasons for people who are not necessarily Christian, but maybe are looking into Christianity. You can go to church to maybe meet people and coordinate and try and understand things that are foreign to you and seem a little weird, maybe make some friends and connections like we kind of have here,
Yeah, and also, for example, there's been a lot of little charity things Michael and I have done throughout our life that ran by churches. Where we don't go to those churches, but if it's a possibility to impact a community in a positive light, we're all for it. And it helps kind of get that branch of we're all in this together.
Yeah. You have any other ideas about why you would go to church, Michael? I know it's a small topic for an episode, kind of, compared to some of the other things we talked about.
But it holds some weight.
Yeah, it is important to kind of address, because there are some of those super ultra edgy atheists out there that are like, I don't understand why you would go to church and sit there and listen to a sermon and just sleep through it and not even really
edgy atheists. For one, because
that to be fair though, that's part of the kind of people that don't try to understand where other people are coming from.
And also I hate to be that person, but those type of edgy atheists don't really have a lot of friends. So they don't even have like the social reason to go to church for friends and support, kind of a support group.
Yeah, and plus, I
And
know
they
it
also
might,
don't tend to do a lot of good for the community.
as they would say in the free world, it's not as big, but it's still prevalent. But I know for a lot of people who have been incarcerated or gone to rehabs or gone to the military, that's their peace. That's where they can find peace and be able to take their guard down and to connect.
Hollowed ground.
Yeah, it's a safe space for them. And some people need that more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing going to youth, you could tell some of those kids might not have had the greatest home life. And through worship, they're able to find that peace for even if it was just for a couple hours. So I wouldn't say there's really, I mean, obviously there's wrong reasons to go to church, but that's not for us to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways is everybody has their own reason for why they do what they do. And are they always right? No. But is anyone always right? No.
No.
So just if you got a question about this stuff with your friends, or ask yourself, tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, we're open to a lot
Why
of
do you-
questions. So if you have any thoughts,
Heck,
send it to facingthegatespod@gmail.com.
Or when this drops, post it on there to social media link.
Yeah.
Yeah, heck, go
Like,
on
we're-
Facebook and find churches and figure out how to contact them. Ask this question.
Yeah.
Try to find, just talk to people.
Yeah. So kind of concluding this part of why would you go to church, I've kind of come to the conclusion that you can't be a Christian on your own. It's kind of impossible. Sure, you may be able to learn a lot on your own, as I've done in the past, but you will eventually get to a point where you need other people, as I have also, speaking from experience on a lot of these things. It's also selfish to go on the Christian journey alone, which is ironically a very anti-Christian thing to do. You don't want to interpret the Bible all on your own, because this is how cults start. And you don't want to elevate yourself to become the arbiter of truth. Going to church requires humility and knowing your limits.
Yeah, and also nowadays, in the age of the technology, it's even if you can't like physically go, there's some church you might agree with that does like an online sermon. They might have video, they might have audio. There's ways that you can get in contact and listen and communicate without even physically being there, as we've seen throughout this whole messed up year.
Yeah.
And even if, say, it's not talking to a preacher or talking to a member of a certain church, even if you're just creating discourse between your friends on this, or people you respect their knowledge and intelligence and you have questions, I think that's one thing also, is just because they're not labeled something doesn't mean you can't ask.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some people who nowhere near a church, nowhere near a preacher, but you know they're near somebody, whether it's a friend, a family member, someone on the internet they talk to. Creating that discourse and asking these questions can, even if it's just among, say, the three of us, can help us come closer to finding an answer versus just asking it to ourselves and not seeking anything.
Yeah.
And so I see where you're coming from with the, you can't take Christianity on alone. Because first off, Christianity is greater than you. God, to be a Christian is to try to walk with God and let him in. So therefore, you aren't alone. But you also sometimes need guidance. And you can find guidance wherever it shows up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, heck, J-Man was a pretty sociable person, talking to anybody.
Yeah. All right. So do we have any other thoughts on this before I reveal our big next 3 months of episodes that we're going to be doing? Anything else before I crack that open?
No, go ahead.
We've had every every head on the nail. So much that it's now we have a nice, good.
You mean every
structure.
nail on the head?
Yeah, you know what I mean. Not unintentional.
Freudian slip.
Yeah.
Not Freudian slip. It's a slip of the tongue.
Yeah, and it's not spoonerism either.
Sure.
I don't know what. I know what Freudian slips are. I don't know what spinnerisms are.
Okay,
But you can explain to me later.
All right. So, we've been asking the whole question: why would anyone go to church? Why don't we go to church? Actually, we are going to church. All three of us. We've decided to go to, hopefully, I haven't worked out all the details on some of them, 8 local churches, each from a different tradition or denomination across the Christian spectrum. In the upcoming episodes, we're going to sit down and interview the pastors of these churches, pick their brains, and get an understanding of what they believe and why. Then we're going to go to one of their services, and after, we'll come back here and discuss our thoughts and follow up as a follow-up episode. So the boy's about to go to church.
Yeehaw!
And when
Yeah.
David walks in, me and Bailey are just going to break in. This boy is on fire.
I'm just screaming.
Yeah, because get it, guys? Because he's an atheist. He's going to catch on fire from being in church.
I'll just, I'll be a little tingly.
No, I'll just
Michael.
Let's get awfully hot in here.
Yeah. So anyway, next time we are going to be visiting a local mega church they're technically Baptist, but they don't have Baptist in the name. And we'll probably ask about that when we interview the pastor. So the next episode is we're going to be interviewing the pastor. And another thing is the questions that we're going to be interviewing the pastors with, most of them all are the same questions. We're just going to see how different groups answer those same questions.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, some questions are going to have to be more specific to the tradition that we're asking
But
about.
kind of having a controlled variable.
Right.
Because we want to see what their perspective for these issues are.
Yeah, we're going to see where there's similarities, where there's differences. And ultimately, we're not going to be getting too in the weeds on lots of deep theological issues. We're kind of just going to get an introductory level of some of these church groups' theology.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's much more that could be said about these things,
But we would be there for 7 days, no sleep.
for the purposes of our
It's taking us
discussions,
how many hours to get through
And for
a quick synopsis of some major big things?
yeah.
and for all of you guys at home, so we don't bore you to death.
Yeah,
with
you may
8
not
years worth
be theology nerds, and there's other resources that I can point you to if you're interested in that. I'm not a particularly good theologian or anything, and I try to be theologically correct. I'm not someone who is prepared, I guess, or I feel like adequate to talk about that kind of thing with any
learning.
degree of teaching authority, because I'm still learning a lot of it. So next time we're going to be going to interview the megachurch pastor, and then the following week we will give our thoughts on the church service that we go to, which, as I mentioned, is kind of like a modern contemporary megachurch type thing. And we'll give our thoughts, and then we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pull out the Daisy Dukes and my cutoff t-shirt. Gonna see what happens.
All right. Well, do we have anything else we gotta talk about?
I think that's it on my part.
Yeah, hit up follow our social medias, Facing the Gates, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I've been locked out of the Facebook for a couple week or so. I probably need to check that.
A lot of people have.
Okay, so I was just hoping it wasn't our
I mean,
page
the
that got
internet's
screwed.
kind of going to hell in a handbasket recently.
Yeah, anytime there's a cyber attack on Facebook, they will log out and block a lot of people from accessing their stuff. So they're
Gotcha.
profiles don't get stolen.
Anyway, our Instagram and Twitter, though, is definitely still up.
Fuck yeah.
But you should definitely check the Facebook, unless there's people spamming something. That's definitely not us. You can look at the content and tell if it's us because we have the borders around every post, and they rotate the colors, so that's how you know it's us. If somebody isn't doing that, then it's not us.
Memes or the episodes.
Yeah, memes for episodes or mind-boggling questions that no one responds to. So go follow our social medias and have a little chat with us, because the point of these is not to be talking in a vacuum. It's to start conversations and to get you guys thinking and have these discussions with people around you.
Sweet intro jam.
Yeah, that really epic intro song that David made and I mixed, and it was phenomenal. Great time. Anyway,
Yeah.
That's about
fun
it.
fact: we have another idea, but I'm just like, no, that ain't gonna work. So I'm like, let me cook something up real quick.
yeah, we gotta. Maybe we can pull that out of the archives and put it on social media.
Yeah,
Be like, here's the original song.
and I mean, and you were, because you were helping me out, giving me ideas, and you just kind of shut up and let me do it.
Yeah, David works best alone, as you do.
I kind of go into a trance.
Yeah. Anyway, that's about it. It's been real.
It's been fun.
It's been real fun. Next week, we'll go talk to a Baptist pastor, dude.
Get in
Yeah.
that spicy discussion.
Okay. Please never do that again.